Oh, it was just getting really good. Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to the Equity and Engaging Youth Impacted by Sex Trafficking and Exploitation, brought to you by RITEC National Training. Thank you all to our RITEC community, family, and team members for hosting such a great, amazing gathering. We are so thrilled to have you all in community with us today. In this space, our community is filled with thought leaders, advocates, community builders, and much more. So we're honored to really be hosting this space with you all and look forward to growing and learning together as a community. My name is Kanisha Lenore Jean-Baptiste, and I'm a training and capacity manager with Youth Collaboratory, serving in the liberation focus area. My pronouns are she, her, and I have served in the nonprofit community for over 10 years, with my recent efforts bringing me to Youth Collaboratory, focusing on combating human trafficking, advocating for housing justice, and building community through equitable and transformational services. I am based in the sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, yet my heart and my soul is rooted from the beautiful island of Haiti, known to some of you all as Haiti. I am the granddaughter of Potej. I am the daughter of Shemin, and I am the mother to Tori. So today in this space, I am about to bring my entire whole self, and I hope that you all feel comfortable enough to do the same. My community is made up of imaginative leaders who are breaking down systems and barriers every single day, and it's a privilege to be on the call with one of them, where I'm gonna pass it over to Joy.
Good day. Hello, everybody. My name is Joy. I'm so excited to be in community with you all today. I use she, her pronouns. I'm situated on ancestral Ohlone land, commonly referred to as Oakland, California. I am a cisgendered and able-bodied Black woman. My hair is braided, styled up in a bun. I'm sitting in front of a bookcase. I've got pictures and plants behind me. I have the honor of working alongside Lenore, and I get to serve as the Director of Programs for the Liberation and Building Community Focus Areas at Youth Collaboratory. I am the daughter of a Florida-born and New York-raised single mother who is an artist, a fierce advocate for health equity, and who instilled in me early on the importance of social justice and having a good time. I am a music fanatic and often sing responses to questions, and I feel most at home while reading and in nature, and I deeply enjoy moving at a slow pace, food prepared with love, and again, anything with music. My people are West African, my people are creatives, and my people celebrate pride and Black futures daily. So again, I am so excited to be here with you all today. Before we get started, I want to share a little bit about Youth Collaboratory, the place that we're coming from today in our work. Youth Collaboratory serves organizations and professionals working to improve the lives of young people, their families, and communities. We harness the power of the youth services community to innovate, evaluate, and drive effective strategies that assure the safety and well-being of youth and young adults, unlocking their limitless potential. Our work focuses primarily on 3 areas. It's coordinated community responses to youth and young adult homelessness, preventing and addressing relationship violence and sexual exploitation and trafficking of youth, and supporting opportunities for young people to build community with family, with their peers, and with others to enhance their access and explore their strengths and develop lasting connections. Through our training and technical assistance in the liberation focus area, we address the prevalence and persistence of racism and ethnic bias that continue to shape practices, and our work is informed and led by those with lived expertise. You will see that much of our work is focused on Black girls because Black girls are often punished and marginalized and left out by the very institutions that can and should protect them, a byproduct of which leads to the disproportionate impact of sex trafficking on Black girls. Normalizing the centering of Black girls in prevention and intervention efforts positively impacts all youth placed at highest risk, actually, for being victimized by sex trafficking. So to learn more about the work of the Liberation Team and more about Youth Collaboratory, please visit our website at www.youthcollaboratory.org. So now we have introduced ourselves, we've talked about the organization, and now we want to get to know some of you. I've been watching some of your introductions come through the chat, but we'd love to see a few more in the chat. We'd love to know, continue to add your location, and if you would, something that you're looking forward to this week. I see we have Seattle here, Kansas City,
Cleveland, Ohio,
North Carolina, St. Louis.
We have Las Vegas in the house.
Awesome. Hi, Georgia, Kentucky,
Wyoming.
Oh, Tahoe. Oh, no, it's beautiful there right now. Texas, Michigan,
Utah.
Beautiful. So nice to be in community with you all today. Hi, Missouri. Good afternoon. We have a lot of Nevada folks here today.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's at least one another California person on this call. Where are we, California? Syracuse. Oh, it's chilly. I know it's chilly there. Hi, Ukiah and Sacramento. I love it. Good to see you all. Yeah. Well, that counts too, Violetta. Hey, Florida. Hey, Mark. So wonderful to see you all. Continue to introduce yourselves, let people know where you're coming from. If there's anything that you're feeling excited about that's giving you life today, this week, feel free to add that too. Hi, Michaela. Michaela's on our Girls Action Board team. It's so wonderful to be in space with you today. All right.
Yes, so thank you all for introducing yourselves into the chat. So we're going to kind of do a dive into this work and what we're going to be discussing today. So when we're thinking about youth experiencing homelessness and trafficking, oftentimes the work is very siloed. However, we know that trafficking doesn't just happen in a vacuum, and not having access to safe and sustainable housing is a primary risk factor. So some of the data that we want to share with you all is one, nearly 1 in 5 youth experiencing homelessness were victims of human trafficking. Youth experiencing homelessness who have also been victims of sex trafficking are more likely to have mental health and substance abuse challenges. Some other things that we have seen is that youth that are experiencing trafficking and youth that are also experiencing homelessness and that bridge in between it have also experienced physical and emotional abuse by parents or guardians, or have a history of sexual abuse. So the lack of basic needs, such as not having a safe place to sleep at night, often plays a role into youth that is being trafficked or experiencing trafficking. More to keep in mind is that those intersectionality. So another intersectionality that we found in a lot of the research is that there is an overrepresentation of Black youth that are LGBTQIA youth experiencing homelessness. LGBTQIA youth make up 5 to 7% of youth population, however, make up 20 to 40% of the homeless youth population. So why is this conversation today? It's because as we address our efforts to dismantle homelessness and youth experiencing homelessness, we have to understand that trafficking and youth experiencing homelessness, those issues are oftentimes siloed. So when we're going forward in our work and our advocacy, we want to really empower organizations to look at those bridges, look at those intersections, and create those pathways, those links, and addressing those multiple issues and those challenges so that we can better serve the youth in our community.
Thank you, Lenore. I mean, I appreciate you saying that. And something that I want to add to and share with you today is that the life expectancy of a young person experiencing trafficking is 7 years without intervention. Without intervention. And that's something that I'm going to ask us to remember, because we're going to call back to this point as we continue to have the conversation today. So if we really understand that life intervention, it requires us to come in to intervene. If we don't, that the life expectancy of a young person experiencing trafficking dramatically shifts. And so sometimes we come into the spaces and people are like, why are you in an RHY space talking about this? And this is why, because you all are in the prime space to intervene. And so we want to continue to do that work that Lenora is talking about, which is to de-silo, to know that we're all doing the same work, we're all in the same community. And we want to be sure that we're empowered to have the information that we need in order to have these kind of interventions. But before we delve deeper into this conversation, we want to set in some community agreements. So although we are not able to guarantee safety in this virtual environment, we can have a shared expectation of what it means to be in respectful community and hold one another accountable to these agreements. So it's a practice that we find helpful when centering equity and engaging with youth and young adults, and especially when centering those who have been impacted by sex trafficking or trauma. So I'm going to add these agreements. There's just a few agreements to the chat, and I'm going to briefly discuss them. The first is listen to understand. We want to agree that learning leave the room, but any stories stay. So I want to use those I statements after we leave this space. We want to acknowledge that oppression and racism are real and present. And that's important as we have this conversation and do this work. We want to assume good intent, but be accountable when there is negative impact. So those are some of the agreements that I'd like for us to hold ourselves accountable to as we have this conversation today, and as we leave this space to consider thinking about when we are having conversations about equity and trafficking and youth impacted by trafficking. And I'll pass it on to you, Lenore.
Thank you. So now that we've went over some of our community agreements, we want to go and share some terms and definitions with you all. So one of the things that you already hear often in our presentation is you're going to hear culture, you're going to hear a Black girl, you're going to hear community, and we're going to hear sex trafficking. So we want to do some level setting so that we are making sure that we're all on the same page with the terms and definitions when we're saying these words. So culture is going to be defined as the characteristics, features of everyday existence, such as the versions of a way of life shared by people in a place or time. Black girl, it's going to be female identifying persons of Native African origin, both continental and non-continental, a representation of their citizenship and their nationality. Community is going to be defined as unified body of individuals. Sex trafficking is going to be the term. Sex trafficking means that the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provisions, or obtaining of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act. A commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age. So a lot of individuals will be talking about in this space, Black girls, minors, and we were talking about culture and community in our spaces today. So centering culture, a deeper dive. We want to invite you all to jump into the chat and let's have some dialogue. So we want you to feel good right now. Think about your identity. In the beginning, we were able to kind of share our whole self introductions. We brought in our culture, where our people are from, and the things that really define us. So we want to hear from you all. What is something about your culture or identity that you are proud of? So think about some of those things and then share them with us in the chat, please. All the shades are beautiful. Proud of Black skin. Proud to be granddaughter of Italian immigrants. Yes. Proud of my hair and Blackness. I'm proud to be a Black woman. I am proud of my natural hair. Yes. I am proud of the creativity and the resiliency of my queer young siblings. Music, as it means to communicate emotions. Yes. My love for sharing space with family. Proud to being a first generation college student. Congratulations and shout out to you. My family name means a lot to me. For being from a rural area.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a sense of community in that rural area, that that's a part of the culture of that rural area in West Virginia, Clarissa. I see that.
Proud Latina. I'm proud of being a woman, Puerto Rican, and a member of the LGBT community.
Mhm. Proud of our resilience and the way we can find joy even when the systems are created to break it.
Hmm, that's profound.
Mhm.
What else? What are we proud of when we think about ourselves, our identity, our cultures?
All right, somebody said it, great food and fun. Proud of my family values. I love that, Mrs. Hamilton. Mm, mm, wow.
Proud of my Cajun roots.
Yeah. Mhm.
Proud of my indigenous roots. Yes.
Yeah, I love this. And thank you, Lenore, for inviting us into a space of thinking about our culture and the things that make us feel really proud. Thank you all for sharing some of these things. Many of us do derive a deep pride in our culture. So clearly culture helps to inform our identities and how we see and experience others. So we're going to watch a short clip by Chimamanda Adichie on the dangers of a single story, and then we're going to have some discussion right after.
I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had, as was the norm, live-in domestic help who would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams and rice and our old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit. And his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use a stove. What struck me was this: she had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me, as an African, was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. So that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. It is impossible to talk about the single story without talking about power. There is a word, an Igbo word, that I think about whenever I think about the power structures of the world, and it is nkali. It's a noun that loosely translates to be greater than another. Like our economic and political walls, stories too are defined by the principle of nkali. How they are told, who tells them, when they are told, how many stories are told, are really dependent on power. Power is the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person. The Palestinian poet Mourid Barghouti writes that if you want to dispossess a people, the simplest way to do it is to tell their story and to start with secondly. Start the story with the arrows of the Native Americans and not with the arrival of the British, and you have an entirely different story. Start the story with the failure of the African state and not with the colonial creation of the African state, and you have an entirely different story.
Yeah. So when watching this, what came up for me first was like, ooh, all the times that I have been single storied, all the ways that I experienced that as a intersectional being with many different identities, but also the ways in which I have inadvertently single storied others, and especially youth. So one of the things that we wanted to make space for during our time today is what are kind of opening the floor to what are some of the ways that youth can be single storied while navigating services. So we have time for 2 to 3 people to come off mute and talk a little bit about what comes up for you having just watched that video. We'd love to, I think we have, time for 2 to 3. I see somebody already added in the chat, definitely through their trauma, for sure. And what are some of the other ways that youth and young adults can be single storied? Someone added their sexuality, LGBTQ. We can absolutely single story people through that means. And gender identity, poverty, a condition that they're living through, the neighborhoods that they come from, lived experiences, economic background, race, economic status, yeah.
The reputation of their parents.
What else? Being young. I'm so happy you said that, Anita. Yeah. Ageism is a whole thing. Spirituality and religion, teenage motherhood, challenges with substances. Yes, prejudice and stereotypes and assumptions correlating to their identities. Experience of foster care, victim, the label of being labeled a victim. So many labels for sure. Unmotivated. Yeah, lazy. Yeah.
I'll unmute. So I think that sometimes when we find people who are in need, many times we say they are there because that's where they want to be. Look at someone piggybacking my lazy. And so we really have to be careful when we're working with them to be positive and to try to bring out those positive and even focus on their positives. So I want to be brief. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. We appreciate that. I think that's a long conversation. That's another 2 hours, really. We could just spend talking about the idea of choice and trafficking of young people. Go for it, Mary. I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that we need to be very careful in this trafficking work about being single storied with recruiting, because recruiting is very, very much a part of trafficking. And I know in housing programs, we can label and be single storied with somebody as a recruiter when actually they are just being the bottom and they are just doing what they need to do as part of the trafficking organization.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mary. Yeah, thank you all for who came off mute. I appreciate your courage and vulnerability and speaking today and coming in the space with us. And And thank you all for those who added in the chat. We really appreciate this conversation. I wish we had a full 4.5, 5 hours to be in person and lean into some of these a little more deeply, but we're going to keep moving. And just to kind of bring this point home, that the single storying, it moves us away from the possibility of authentic connection, but also away from cultural humility. And it assumes cultural competence, right? So that's the difference between I'm curious and I'm willing and I want to get to know you and who you are as a person and what's unique about you versus declaring that I know your story, so I know you. And we've all seen how this can be problematic and also how it can be really dangerous, especially for Black girls. When we think about the stories we tell ourselves about Black girls and communities, we have to be really mindful of how that can lead to inequities in service delivery and outcome for Black girls.
Thank you for that, Joy. So we want to do a focus on Black girls, a deeper dive into the work that we are doing. So our work centers the liberation of all youth. However, we understand to make an impact change, we need to start services to address those that are most vulnerable. So we have some stats here. If you all just can look over at our presentation, we found that Black girls are suspended at higher rates, 12%, than girls of any other race or ethnicity, and most boys. We also found that while only 14% of children under 18 in the United States are Black, 35% of the girls in the juvenile justice facilities are Black. So back to that single story, right? Who are we calling aggressive? Who are we saying are dangerous? Who are we saying are the problem, right? That single story narrative. Also, some more data that we wanted to share with you is that Black children are overrepresented in the child welfare and foster care systems by 60%, and also overrepresented in the juvenile justice. What that looks like is 1 in 3 Black girls, 1 in 4 trans youth, 1 in 5 girls, 1 in 5 boys experiencing homelessness also experience sexual assault or sexual abuse. So these are clear risk factors for trafficking. However, they're being detained. So the criminalization of trauma that we're seeing, and a lot of times it's happening in overrepresented numbers for Black youth. Some studies also indicate that girls' behavioral reactions to sexual abuse and trauma is criminalized, like I just shared, leaving the victimization unaddressed and reinforces the sex abuse to prison pipeline. So what is the role of systematic racism? Well, health disparities, preventable contributions to poor health due to food deserts that we're seeing in communities of color, and underrepresented communities that have limited access to resources and whole foods. We also see inequitable access to housing, so the lack of generational wealth due to discriminatory lending practices and housing practices, which creates poor neighborhoods or underfunded schools. So a lot of times when we're working with young people, we're like, this young person is coming from this community, and here are the risk factors. But we're also ignoring that the risk factors were created from a racist system, and that those things are not necessarily part of the youth. They're a response. It's a response to trauma that our youth are experiencing. All of these work hand in hand in the decreasing of life and value for youth that are experiencing trafficking and homelessness. They're not just coming in and not having access to shelter. They're coming in with other traumas that our society is playing a hand in creating. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Black girls are disproportionately affected by sex trafficking, despite the fact that some young Black girls are suffering from disproportionately high levels of trauma. Little attention is being paid to the potential trauma. This results in Black girls not receiving adequate supports and solutions to address and center the needs of Black girls. It's imperative that we begin to engage them. So we need to start engaging youth. And back to that single story, not single storying just the trauma, but really the resiliency, the whole person, the beauty of that culture, those things that we shared earlier. How are we engaging young people in their healing? If they don't give us a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Shirley Chisholm. So we just like sharing that with you all, that quote from Shirley Chisholm. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to you, Joy.
Thank you, Lenore. I do love that quote. And I do keep it's not a folding chair, but it's a beach chair in my trunk, in my car. So I literally always have a seat with me. I can always just sit down somewhere and make myself welcome and at home. And I advise us all to do that. We're going to spend some time talking a little bit about bias, some of the structures that enable bias, and some considerations for mitigating and preventing normalized bias that is often a part of the spaces, systems, and processes that we work in. To get us started, I'd like for us to take another moment to think about what comes up for you when you think about the factors that increase someone's risk of being trafficked. If you could please add to the chat, what are some of the factors that increase the risk of being trafficked? I'm going to add that question in the chat in case you're like me and you want to see the words. If you don't have a seat at the table, be the cook shelf and plan the venue. I love that. So in terms of risk, increased risk, little to no support, I see previous sexual abuse, unstably housed, systems involvement, foster care, previous experience of domestic violence, family conflict, lack of family connections, no support, abuse, a lack of strong connections, experiencing houselessness, and being judged by it. Yeah. Poverty, challenges with mental health. Experiencing
Poor permanent connections. Wrong place, wrong time. Recurring crisis, being disempowered by the systems in place, lack of comprehensive sex education.
Shame, which can also come from a lack of comprehensive sex education. Predatory folks on the internet, for sure. Yeah. Thank you for adding these. I'm seeing some individual, what we would call maybe some individual risk factors, some community factors or things around resources or lack of resources in the community, relationship factors, like what the experience has been with families and in other relationships, and also a few others as well. So I appreciate you all adding these, and feel free to continue to add them. We're going to take some time and watch another video and have a short discussion afterwards. Yes, victim blaming as well. Thank you for adding that. All right.
This is Jamal. Jamal is a boy who lives in a poor neighborhood. He has a friend named Kevin who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. All of Jamal's neighbors are African American, and all of Kevin's neighbors are white. Because Jamal's school district is mostly funded by property taxes, his school is not very well funded. His classrooms are overcrowded, his teachers are underpaid, and he doesn't have access to high-quality tutors or extracurricular activities. Kevin's school district is also funded by property taxes, so his school is very well funded. His classrooms are never crowded, his teachers are very well paid, and he has access to high-quality tutors and lots of extracurricular activities. Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism. To understand it better, let's look at what life was like for Kevin and Jamal's grandparents. Decades after the Civil War, many government agencies started to draw maps dividing cities into sections that were either desirable or undesirable for investment. This practice was called redlining, and it usually blocked off entire black neighborhoods from access to private and public investment. Banks and insurance companies used these maps for decades to deny black people loans and other services based purely on race. Historically speaking, owning a home and getting a college education is the easiest way for an American family to build wealth. But when Jamal's grandparents wanted to buy a house, the banks refused because they lived in a neighborhood that was redlined. So Jamal's grandparents were not able to buy a home, and because colleges could prevent them from attending through legal segregation, their options for higher education were really scarce. Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and got accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids. Even as late as the 1980s, an investigation into the Atlanta real estate market showed that banks were more willing to lend to low-income white families than to middle or upper-income African American families. As a result, today, for every $100 of wealth held by a white family, black families have $5.04. A 2017 study confirms that redlining is still affecting home values in major cities like Chicago today. This explains how Kevin and Jamal inherited vastly different circumstances. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. A big part of systemic racism is implicit bias. These are prejudices in society that people are not aware that they have. Let's go back to Kevin and Jamal. Against all odds, Jamal manages to be the only student from his high school to get accepted into a great university, the same one that Kevin and his high school friends are attending. But after Kevin and Jamal both graduate, Jamal notices that his resume isn't drawing as much interest as Kevin's, even though they graduated from the same program with the exact same GPA. Unfortunately for Jamal, studies show that resumes with white-sounding names get twice as many callbacks as identical resumes with black-sounding names. Implicit bias is one of the reasons why the black unemployment rate is twice the rate of white unemployment, even among college graduates today. You can see evidence of systemic racism in every area of life. The disparities in family wealth, incarceration rates, political representation, and education are all examples of systemic racism. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge with systemic racism is that there's no single person or entity responsible for it, which makes it very hard to solve. So what can you do? The first thing you can do is work towards becoming more aware of your own implicit biases. What are some prejudices that you might hold that you're not aware of? Second, let's acknowledge that the consequences of slavery and Jim Crow laws are still affecting access to opportunity today. As a result, we should support systemic changes that create more equal opportunities for everyone. Increasing public school funding and making it independent from property taxes would be a great start, so that poor and wealthy districts can receive equal access to resources. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Luckily, we're all part of the system, which means that we all have a role to play in making it better. Peace.
All right. So I do enjoy that video. I feel like it sums up quite a bit really quickly. And again, if we had a full day, we could spend a full day just talking about some of those things and some of the things that lead to these inequities. So now that we've watched that together, I'd love to hear from you all. I mean, we actually already talked about the things that place people at higher risk for being trafficked, things like housing instability, poverty, systems involvement, health. When you think about Jamal's risk for being trafficked and Kevin's risk for being trafficked, two folks in that video there, why might Jamal's risk for being trafficked be higher than Kevin's? I'd love to hear from some folks in the chat. Lack of money, lack of resources. And what else? Increased vulnerability due to lack of resources in the communities. Treated differently, generational trauma and oppression, less protection. Yep. Inequities and policing. Less support. Okay, so as we think of these are great. Yep, these things are all true based on what we watch in the video. But when we think about these things, when we think about inequitable access to housing, generational wealth or the lack thereof, neighborhoods that have fewer resources, job insecurity, then we have to ask ourselves that follow-up question is, what role does systemic racism play in increasing risk for Jamal? Spoiler alert, it plays a big one, right? If we think about the contributors to health, the contributors to wellness, it includes access to parks, to grocery stores, financial institutions, well-funded schools, livable wages, affordable housing, all of these things. So while Jamal may achieve great things and never be impacted by trafficking, create an increase of challenges for Jamal to overcome. We know that human trafficking and sex trafficking does not happen in a vacuum, that it's often coupled with and exacerbated by pre-existing vulnerabilities. Some studies indicate, and like Lenore mentioned, I'm just gonna say this again, that girls' behavioral reactions to sexual abuse and trauma is often criminalized, leaving that victimization unaddressed. According to the CDC, life expectancy is lower and it decreased by 2.3 years for Black women in 2020 alone. And Black trans women have the shortest life expectancy rate of all persons. So we share this information not to paint a bleak picture or to suggest that only these groups are at risk of being trafficked, but again, to increase the awareness of the inequities that fuel the disproportionate impact of trafficking on BIPOC youth and people with intersecting identities like BIPOC LGBTQ plus youth. So the question that we like to ask ourselves,
This is Jamal.
What?
Jamal is a boy.
Now what? So we have all this information and we actually don't have enough because there is a dearth of research here. Data is a whole thing. That's another 4.5 hours I'd love to spend in person having conversations about how we're collecting good data and what we're doing with it. But right now we want to have a conversation about mitigating bias in service delivery. So one of the ways that we can enhance services for youth and young adults at highest risk of being trafficked, many of whom are BIPOC LGBTQ+. Some of the ways that we can mitigate bias is including bias mitigation practices, which means we have to acknowledge that it exists. So we talked a bit about being single stories. And from what we can see, personal bias obviously can intervene, can show up in service delivery. When things are going well for us, we're less likely to act on our implicit bias. But on a stressful day, let's say I spilled my coffee all over my keyboard, my cat ran outside, I can't find them, somebody cut me off in traffic, there's a much higher likelihood that I'm going to be reactive on that day than I am going to be responsive, which leaves a bigger window for my personal biases to come out. So we have to be mindful that sometimes there's a gap between who we are and what our biases are, how we see ourselves and how our biases actually come out. So we have to have a sense of awareness and we have to do the work to work through those personal biases and get to those reactions, those better reactions. Some of the things that we offer for organizations when thinking about those implicit biases and bias in service delivery is screening for it up front in our hiring practices, training for bias mitigation regularly, and an expectation that staff have a high level of self-awareness regarding their own bias. We all have it. And a willingness to work to change. So we have to remember that a bad day for us could mean that we miss that opportunity for intervention. And remember, I asked you all to remember at the start of our time together that the life expectancy for a young person who is impacted by trafficking is 7 years without intervention. So if I'm having the worst day possible, and my biases are activated, I miss that opportunity to intervene. That could mean that something serious for someone whose life I can make a positive impact on. So beyond that individual bias is that institutional bias, right? What are the norms? How do our unwritten practices and policies help or cause harm to the very communities who would benefit most from these projects, from these efforts? Would we benefit? Do we have an equity screen? Do we have culturally responsive intake processes and accountability measures? Who decides if we are successful at these things? Hopefully it's your participants, right? And then there's also that structural bias. So is there a shared understanding among your staff, among volunteers of these societal inequities that lead to trafficking, and the ability to authentically and with cultural humility engage with others from different backgrounds, experience, and identities? Is there level setting and shared understanding? So what is needed, and this is one of my favorite quotes to share, especially after all of the statistics and stats and some of the things we shared today, is systemic racism is often wrongly interpreted as an accusation that everyone in the system is racist. In fact, it is the opposite. It means that we have systems and institutions that produce racially disparate outcomes. So we have a role to play. As members of these systems, organizations, and processes, we can shift towards change and move away from that old thinking. And what is needed is the training to change the narrative, to increase awareness, responsive institutions and systems, and community participation and inclusion. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Lenore to take us on to that next portion.
Definitely. Thank you, Joy. So regarding centering culture and engaging Black girls in organizations, we first want to talk about what happens when we're not centering and engaging Black girls. So we can go to that next slide. Impacts on services. What does that impact look like? What does it look like when you are having that day and the coffee has been spilled and now you're sitting there and you're frustrated? Well, the engagement that we have with young people is critical. And what we can cause is we can cause a loss of or never gain trust. Right? That small window you have with that young person coming into community with you, and now you're irritated, can be catastrophic to the work that you provide. Negative assumptions, right? So we're always thinking about, we're talking today about the biases and how we impact young people, but young people can be looking at us like, this is not a good social worker. This is not the counselor for me. So what happens when they feel that way and those negative assumptions on us? Lacks of authenticity, right? So what does it look like when we don't even seem like we're being honest, right? So what does it look like after leaving these trainings and we're not embodying or implementing the work? It just doesn't seem real. We can say any hashtag or phrase, but young people feel our energy. And sometimes when that energy is just not right, they don't return. They don't return to our services. They don't return to our programming. And that is vital to our communities. So when we're going to go on to the next slide, we're going to talk about ways to center culture in service delivery. So how do you do it, right? So in programming, first, provide culturally specific programming. So this is something that we're seeing all across the nation. And again, when we talked to you at the top of the hour, what does that look like? We've seen programs where they've literally had a girl circle and young women are coming in and they're able to do their hair, and each culture can do their hair that's unique to them, but creating that space, right? And that community and centering that culture. We've seen drumming circles. We've seen all the different things where we center the things that oftentimes we were told to hide about ourselves. Partnering with Black organizations for equitable partnership. It's not enough to have Black consultants come in and say, hey, we're kind of equitable, but what does it look like on your staff, your team members, right? When young people walk in, so that they're not, when we talk about media and always seeing a negative representation of themselves, you know what can be empowering? When they walk into our drop-in centers and they see themselves in the case manager, they see themselves in the director. Hire staff that reflects youth cultural identity. Diverse cultural and social groups contribute to the mission and operations of the organizations. Like we were talking about, bringing those seats to the table, right? Having that diverse voice, really centering the cultures that are within our communities and centering culture as a protective factor. Utilizing resources, assign part of your budget to staff developing programming and culture. So that is really critical, right? Because I think a lot of times we're just running and running. We're talking about what our evidence-based practices. We're talking about what's the latest research. And oftentimes culture gets pushed aside. But let's reimagine what our service delivery will feel like when we center culture, because then we begin to center the identity of the young people that we're working with. In leadership, diversifying your boards. Do we have young voices at the table to really share if it's working or not? Executive and supervisory positions. So when we're talking about leadership, having leadership that reflects the young people that we're providing services to, providing leadership, mentorship to staff, those are those healthy pathways. So when we're hiring individuals with those lived expertise, are we creating pathways for them to become those directors, to become those supervisors in our programming? Or are we just taking the information, taking the trauma and leaving them at entry-level positions? And including youth and young adults in leadership that you serve. Because if we're going to serve a population, we need to see them reflective in our leadership, in our processes, and our decision making. So, takeaways. We want to engage you all in another chat conversation. I've really been enjoying reading the chat and communicating with you all. So the question that we have is, what is one thing you plan on taking with you from today's conversation? It could be something you're taking with you or something that you're taking to your organization, but we would love to see some takeaways in the chat. Okay, we brought some African-American hair products. Okay, and the response has been great. Our clients are often surprised but delighted. I never knew that this was an issue. Now I know and will buy more. That is huge. Yeah. Every workshop we have, we're in community with folks, everyone's like, who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? Get that shea moisturizer, y'all. Pantene, it just is not gonna do it for us. Unless it's the gold bottle. What else? What are some takeaways? I'll be taking away knowledge of risk factors. It's important that we walk in fullness of who we are. If we are self-empowered, then we'll speak volumes to our youth, especially if it's a youth who we share an identity with or see themselves reflected in us, right? Let us do the work.
Yeah, that was lovely. Thank you for that.
Using the lifespan fact in my trainings. Yes, at my center, we make sure our ethnic groups are taken care of once they come to us. Yes.
And yeah, and thinking about things like hair and food and all the things that make someone's, all the things that when we're thinking about what makes us feel good about our culture and we're designing a menu for our drop-in center, do we have that food reflected? Do we have the sounds and the music reflected? Do we have the representation reflected? What are the ways that we're ensuring that people feel at home when they're with us?
Seeing that I'm the only Black person on our staff, I'm going to share this so that they can understand the cultural differences. Yeah. And that's critical, right? Because Blackness is diverse. So needing more team members, right? To represent youth that are coming in with those different Black identities. Food choices and preference, yes. 90% of the girls that come into your shelter are Black. Yes, and you're the only one on staff. Yeah, that's going to be critical.
Yes, please share the Chimamanda Adichie video. We love that video.
Making sure website, program information, visuals, wall art show diversity. Yes. And also making sure they're not single storied. It's when you go on a website and it's like, you know, homeless youth, right? Even just that language and not youth experiencing homelessness. Like, let's be person first centered. And like everybody, the young people look sad. Like, who's going to want to come to that programming? So show the diversity and show the story of what they feel like when they're in your program, showing that joy on your websites and your social media. Understanding that Black girls can be passionate about what she is talking about and not always just angry. I'm a passionate Black girl, so I appreciate that. Sharing that. Any other takeaways that we want to share? Having the courage to speak up when you see inequities happening. I have been advocating for years for us to not only be the direct support staff, and we have made waves. That courage piece, right?
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for sharing with us. We love all of this. So what we do want to share with you all is that Youth Collaboratory and our partners at the Center of Core Innovation are seeking input for individuals working with the anti-trafficking movement and adjacent fields, so all of you on this call, to share how your program recognizes culture to support participants in their healing and growth journeys. We are looking for participants to fill out this survey who identify as Black, Afro, African, female identities for the survey. So if that is not you, but you have a colleague that you would like to share this with, please take this link that we're going to share with you all in the chat box. And what we're wanting to do is create something where we get to talk about culture as a protective factor, centering ourselves in our identity. So please, if you have those identities that was shared, Black, Afro, African, continental, non-continental, Afro-Latina, all the things, Afro-Caribbean, female identities, we would love to hear from you all on how your culture has been a protective factor for you. So before we're getting close to the end of our time together, we did want to share a video lifting up the voices of the Youth Collaboratory Girls Action Board team. We would like to share this video that Joy's about to play.
Black girls, speak your mind.
We see it too often. We're pushed aside and constantly criticized for the color of our skin, with roots of great divine and skin with dark complexion. Finding this word of their many objections. They fear us when they speak our mind or say that we have an attitude. Fear us no more, as our voices will be heard at a great magnitude.
Black girls, speak your mind.
So many words, but they went unspoken, until I decided I would no longer allow myself to be unheard or feel broken.
Black girls, speak your mind.
For many places and many faces travel with pace, society and race try to hide their face from the trauma we face in which they try and erase. We move about in unison. What do we do to them?
Black girls, speak your mind.
I used to think if I showed my true colors, what would society think? Would they pity me, laugh, or consider me to be overreacting? Every day, my thoughts ran so deep.
We spend most of our lives being judged on how to move correctly, how to dress, how to speak, how to walk with class. We are seen weak, told to sit up straight when they walk past.
Say your truth.
We carry that weight. We've built and we've healed. We've fought, not folded. Where we are determined ends, someone to another must begin.
We are outgoing, charismatic, and innovative.
So are you even looking if you don't see extraordinary?
Black women turn heads with their intricate minds and lovely aura.
So are you even looking if you don't see confidence?
We are the foundation, blueprint, and trendsetters.
So are you even looking if you don't see authentic leaders?
We are loving, nurturing, and deserving.
So are you looking if you don't see passion?
We don't fit in any old box, not to be mistaken for mediocre nor average.
Every day until we decide.
When we are divine, we are put in mind. Sister to sister, we are subject to crime. Violence and harm seem to fade through time.
We rise up above with thick armor and pure skin, with brains of excellence in shaping the future. It has no end, moving to brighter outcomes when they were meant to be tragic.
The true representation of Black girl magic.
But this isn't where it starts or stops.
Come sit at this table that centers us. It prioritizes girls and women who share our same needs. It is a space that values our expertise, where we have the opportunity and live out our dreams.
You are to respect everyone at this table.
There is intelligence, beauty, power, and life at this table. This is where we're equal. There is no competition. This is where we are engaged in our craft. This is where we are encouraged.
Our path is our choice.
Table or classroom, center Black girls. Table or workspace, center Black girls. Table or organization, center Black girls, no matter the time or the place.
Our voices are powerful just as much as our race.
Joy, that gets me every time. Every time. Are you even looking if you don't see extraordinary? Yes. So we want to open up this space to you all for some Q&A. Are there any questions that you all may have for us? I'm glad to see that you all love the video as well. Shout out to our Girls Action Board.
Whoop, whoop.
Yes, a group of phenomenal women. Yes. So any questions before we wrap this up? Can we share the link to that video? Which video?
Yes, the Gab poem. I'm sorry I didn't title it, but I just added it in the chat.
Okay. All righty then. Thank you all so much for being in community with us today. The work that you all are doing is incredible and it's not easy. So we hope that you walked away. I know that we shared a lot of information, but we hope that you walked away a little inspired, centering your culture, your identity, and importantly, something we didn't get to talk about, but centering your self-care. So please, going into the rest of this week, take care of yourselves, your community, and each other. And just know that Joy and I and our entire youth collaboratory team stands in solidarity with you and the work that you are doing.